You may not realize this, but many of the most important things in your life have already been spoken. In moments when no one was listening. The quiet thoughts before sleep. The fleeting images that appear then dissolve. The dreams that come and go as if they are whispering something, but the daytime is too loud for you to hold on to them. Tonight, there is nothing you need to understand. There is nothing you need to fix. This is simply a stretch of time meant for listening. I'm Milo. I'll be here very close, slowing my voice down with you in this darkness. Over the next hour, the thoughts of Carl Jung will not arrive as lessons, but as old conversations being restored, gentle, deep, and arriving at the right moment. Your body may have been still for quite some time, but your mind is still moving. A kind of tiredness that's hard to name. Not exactly sadness, not exactly worry, just the feeling of having tried for a long time. According to Jung, moments like this are often not signs that you've lost your way, but signals that the psyche is beginning to work at a deeper level, where the effort of the ego is no longer required. Let the bed support you. This space is quiet enough. Your breath can find its own rhythm again. Carl Jung said, "The dream is the small hidden door in the deepest and most intimate sanctum of the soul. There is nothing more you need to do. You may drift into sleep at any moment. What follows is simply a safe current, and you are allowed to rest within it. Human beings always dream. This is true for all of us without exception. Yet most of us wake up each morning with a strange sense of emptiness, remembering nothing at all. No images, no story, no trace. And then we arrive very quickly at a conclusion: I don't dream. But from the perspective of Carl Gustav Jung, that conclusion is not only incorrect, it conceals a deeper, quieter truth, a rupture in the connection between consciousness and the unconscious. Jung never regarded dreams as random byproducts of the brain. For him, dreaming was a natural, continuous activity, biological and profoundly psychological, much like the heartbeat or the breath. Human beings do not begin dreaming when they fall asleep, nor do they stop dreaming when they wake. Dreaming is a background process of the psyche. Forgetting dreams does not mean the psyche has fallen silent. On the contrary, it often means it is speaking, but consciousness is no longer listening. Jung once wrote a line that has become widely known. Dreams are the guiding words of the soul. Carl Jung Collected Works, Volume 10. If dreams are the guiding words of the soul, then not remembering them is not a neutral condition. It is like living beside someone who is constantly whispering, but becoming so accustomed to their presence that you no longer hear them. In many cases, this forgetting does not arise from a lack of ability, but from something deeper. A psychological stance, the defensive posture of the ego. Modern humans are trained to believe in control, logic, planning, and outcomes. We are taught that what cannot be measured is untrustworthy, and what has no immediate utility should be discarded. In such a context, dreams with their symbolic, irrational, ambiguous language become disturbers. Jung understood this clearly. He believed that when consciousness becomes too dominant, too confident in itself, it actively severs its connection with the unconscious, not because the unconscious disappears, but because the ego feels threatened. He wrote, "The unconscious is not just evil by nature, it is also the source of the highest good." Carl Jung, Psychology and Religion. This statement holds an essential paradox, precisely because the unconscious contains both danger and potential. The ego often chooses to turn away from it. Forgetting dreams in this light can be understood as an act of self-protection. When we are not ready to face what is moving beneath the surface, old fears, unresolved conflicts, repressed longings, the psyche continues to dream, but consciousness locks the door. Jung observed that in many patients, the loss of dream recall often accompanies a sense of living flatly without depth, or experiencing an inexplicable fatigue. This is because dreams are not merely nocturnal images. They are pathways through which psychological energy, libido, moves and regulates itself. When that pathway is blocked, the energy does not vanish. It becomes compressed and eventually seeks expression through anxiety, irritability, emptiness, or neurotic symptoms. Jung issued a particularly clear warning. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Carl Jung Collected Works, Volume 9. Not remembering dreams in this sense is not a minor shortcoming. It is a sign that the unconscious is still directing life, but from the shadows. We label this direction personality circumstance or fate, when in reality, it is unrecognized contents quietly steering the course. What is especially notable is this: the ability to remember dreams is not a memory skill, but a way of living. Jung noticed that when people begin to offer genuine respect to their inner life, not superficial curiosity, but sincere listening dreams gradually return, without forcing, without complex techniques. Only one small shift is required, acknowledging that there is another intelligence within us, one that does not belong to the ego. He wrote, dreams show us the unvarnished natural truth, Carl Jung and his symbols. This unvarnished natural truth is precisely what makes dreams uncomfortable for many people. They do not flatter the ego. They do not speak the language of society. They speak in images, symbols, and sensations. And when we live too long inside roles, personas, and external expectations, dreams become a foreign voice. For this reason, not remembering dreams should not be seen as a personal failure. It is a collective consequence of a way of life detached from inner reality. Modern humans do not lack information or stimulation. What they lack is silence, a space where the psyche can speak. Dreams only appear clearly when such space exists. Jung never advised people to force themselves to remember dreams. He did not support violently intruding into the unconscious. On the contrary, he emphasized humility entering sleep as one enters a conversation whose content is not yet known. When we stop demanding, stop controlling dreams, which never truly left, slowly return to memory, like an old friend invited back into the house. And perhaps the most profound reversal Jung offers us here is this: it is not dreams that need us to remember them. It is we who need dreams in order to remember ourselves. When dreams return, it is not merely the recollection of nighttime images. It is a sign that the thread connecting consciousness and the unconscious is being restored, slowly, naturally, and meaningfully. After recognizing that human beings always dream, even when they do not remember, a natural question arises, and it also becomes a quiet bridge leading us into the next part. If dreaming continues as steadily as breathing, why do modern people increasingly turn away from it? The answer does not lie in biology nor in memory. It lies in attitude. An attitude shaped over centuries, skepticism, dismissal, and ultimately avoidance of one's own dream life. Modern people often speak about dreams in a familiar tone. It's just the brain taking out the trash. It means nothing. Nonsense dreams. At first glance, this sounds rational, scientific, reasonable. But in the light of Carl Gustav Jung, this tone is anything but neutral. It does not reflect deeper understanding. It reflects a far subtler fear, the fear of the unconscious. Jung realized very early on that people do not deny dreams because they lack meaning, but because they contain too much meaning. Dreams do not obey daytime logic. They do not ask the ego for permission. They do not check whether we are ready. They expose what has been most carefully concealed: contradictions, desires, fears, and even unlived possibilities. And this is precisely what makes dreams a dangerous territory for the modern ego, which is accustomed to control and social image. Jung once wrote a sentence that is short yet profoundly penetrating. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. Carl Jung, Collected Works, Volume 11. This statement is not a moral accusation. It is a clinical observation. Jung saw that when dreams begin to speak uncomfortable truths, when they question the way we are living, the choices we have made, or the roles in which we are trapped, the most common reaction is not curiosity, but denial. We call dreams random, so that we do not have to listen. We call them annoying, so that we do not have to enter into dialogue. This skeptical attitude is strongly reinforced by modern culture, where the value of something is measured by immediate usefulness. Dreams, with their symbolic language and slow rhythm, do not deliver quick results. They do not solve problems in the language of how to be more successful or how to be stronger. On the contrary, they often raise questions that confuse the ego. And when a culture that worships efficiency encounters something that cannot be optimized, the natural reflex is to push it to the margins. But Jung did not consider this dismissal harmless. He believed that when people collectively turn away from dreams, they do not merely lose a source of information. They lose a fundamental mechanism of psychological regulation. Dreams do not exist to entertain. They exist to balance. They compensate for one-sided conscious attitudes and correct subtle distortions we ourselves cannot see. He wrote, "The dream is a little hidden door in the innermost and most secret recesses of the soul." Carl Jung and his symbols. A little hidden door, and precisely because it is small and unobtrusive, it is easily overlooked. When people become accustomed to living on the surface, in schedules, roles, and identities, they gradually lose the ability to recognize such doors. And instead of acknowledging this distance, they rationalize it in the language of reason. Dreams are unimportant. This avoidance does not occur consciously. Very few people wake up and decide, "Today I will avoid the unconscious." It unfolds quietly through the habit of not pausing after a dream, through immediately reaching for the phone, through laughing off a dream that feels unsettling. Jung called this the dominance of the ego, an ego that fears losing control more than it fears being wrong. He warned, "When an inner situation is not made conscious, it appears outside as fate." Carl Jung, Collected Works, Volume 9. When we reject dreams, we do not eliminate the unconscious. We merely push it out of sight. And then the unconscious continues to act, but through symptoms, conflicts, repeating relationships, or a nameless sense of unease. Skepticism toward dreams from this perspective is not a sign of intelligence, but a form of voluntary blindness. What matters here is this Jung never called on people to blindly believe every dream. He did not advocate for turning nighttime images into something sacred. What he emphasized was an attitude of listening, a humility before the truth that the psyche is far wider than consciousness. When people dismiss dreams, they implicitly assert that only the waking ego is trustworthy, and that is the most dangerous illusion of the modern age. Jung wrote, "The unconscious can make a fool of you in no time." Carl Jung, Letters. Not because the unconscious is malicious, but because it does not accept being ignored. The more it is avoided, the more it seeks expression through less pleasant paths. And thus, denying dreams does not make people safer. It only distances them from their own inner center. From here, the connection to the previous part becomes clear. Not remembering dreams is a symptom. Dismissing and avoiding dreams is the deeper cause. When attitude changes, when people stop treating dreams as mental waste and begin to see them as messages not yet decoded, the door to dialogue with the unconscious truly opens. And only then do dreams cease to be a nuisance and become what they have always been, a quiet invitation from the psyche, waiting to be answered with courage and listening. After clearly recognizing the skeptical and avoidant attitude modern people hold toward dreams, a deeper layer begins to reveal itself. For if dreams were merely products of personal imagination, mere neural waste, or daytime residue, then dismissing them might carry no serious consequence. But Jung introduced a proposition that unsettled this entire framework of understanding dreams are not created by the ego. And once this is acknowledged, the true nature of that prior avoidance becomes visible, not scientific skepticism, but the ego's fear of losing control. According to Jung, the ego is only the center of consciousness, not the center of the entire psyche. It governs what we know about ourselves, what we can name, control, and present to the world. But human psychological life does not revolve around the ego. It moves around a deeper, broader, more ancient order, the very ground from which dreams arise. For this reason, Jung stated unequivocally, dreams are not products of will, nor continuations of personal desire. They originate from an inner intelligence beyond the reach of the ego. He wrote, "Dreams are not the product of conscious thought, but arise from the unconscious." Carl Jung, Collected Works, Volume 8. This statement, seemingly simple, is in fact revolutionary. It strips the ego of a privilege. Modern humans often assume by default the privilege of being the author of the inner world. If dreams are not made by us, then we are no longer the absolute masters of our inner lives. And it is precisely this realization that unsettles the ego. For the ego only feels safe when it believes that everything happening lies within its control, or at least within its explanatory reach. Jung observed that many people, when they begin to pay attention to their dreams, react with suspicion, mixed with discomfort. Why would I dream such things? I never thought about that. These very questions inadvertently confirm Jung's point. If dreams were direct reflections of daytime thoughts or intentions, there would be nothing surprising about them. But dreams always bring surprise. They arrive like a stranger entering the room, speaking words we were not prepared to hear. For this reason, Jung described the unconscious as an autonomous psychological reality. It does not submit to the ego. It has its own logic, its own language, and its own purpose. Dreams are the way the unconscious communicates with consciousness, not to please it, but to correct the subtle imbalances of conscious life. Jung wrote, "The unconscious is autonomous. It does not obey the intentions of the conscious mind." Carl Jung Collected. Works, Volume 7. The word autonomous here carries great weight. The unconscious operates on its own, regulates itself, and responds independently. This also explains why dreams so often contradict the image we hold of ourselves. A person who sees themselves as rational may dream of intense emotions. A person who considers themselves moral may dream of instinctual images, not to humiliate the ego, but to balance it. Because dreams are not created by the ego, they cannot be manipulated by it for long. Jung warned that attempts to control dreams through willpower often backfire. The more the ego tries to impose meaning, the more stubborn the unconscious becomes, expressing itself through increasingly extreme images. What the unconscious demands is not control, but dialogue. He wrote a line that has become widely known. The dream shows the inner truth and reality of the dreamer. Carl Jung and his symbols. Inner truth. Not the truth the ego wants to hear, but the truth actually operating within the psyche. And because this truth is not produced by the ego, it often shocks, confuses, or provokes resistance. This is the deeper reason modern people prefer to deny dreams. Dreams place the ego in a position where it is no longer central. But Jung did not see this as a threat. On the contrary, he saw it as an opportunity. When the ego accepts that it is not the sole authority, a new process of inner maturation begins. In this context, dreams become quiet teachers, not instructing through concepts, but through vivid, emotionally charged, and unforgettable images. Jung once wrote, "Dreams may give expression to ineluctable truths which the conscious mind denies." Carl Jung, Collected Works, Volume 16, Ineluctable Truths. These are precisely what the ego tries to avoid through reason busyness or rigid scientific explanation. But dreams do not argue. They simply appear, repeat, and wait. And if they are ignored long enough, they will seek other paths to be heard through symptoms crises or a profound sense of disorientation. From here, the continuity with the previous part becomes clear. Modern people doubt and avoid dreams because they sense, even if only vaguely, that dreams do not belong to their control. To acknowledge dreams as products of a deeper intelligence is to admit that the ego is not omnipotent. And this is the most difficult admission for a culture that places the ego on the throne. Yet Jung believed that precisely in relinquishing this illusion of control, human beings begin to access their true depth when we stop asking, "Did I dream this?" and begin asking, "What within me is seeking to be seen?" A new door opens. That door does not lead to the false safety of the ego, but to the wholeness of the self, the deepest center of the psyche. And from this point on, the journey with dreams is no longer about remembering or forgetting, believing or disbelieving. It becomes an existential choice to continue living under unconscious direction without knowing it, or to enter into dialogue with the deeper intelligence that is already at work within us. Once the foundational truth is accepted that dreams are not created by the ego, an inevitable consequence follows if dreams do not obey the will of the ego. Then what do they serve? Jung did not leave this question hanging. He answered it clearly and consistently. Throughout his entire body of work, dreams are compensatory and orienting. They do not arise at random. They come to correct conscious life when a person strays from the deeper order of the psyche. According to Jung, human consciousness always tends toward one-sidedness. We choose a way of living a value system, a social role, and then fully identify with it. The ego prefers clarity, consistency, and above all, the safety of what is familiar. Yet this very bias, no matter how subtle, creates inner imbalance. And when consciousness fails to recognize its own deviation, dreams assume the compensatory role. Jung wrote, "The dream is specifically the utterance of the unconscious." Carl Jung, Collected Works, Volume 8, Utterance a Statement. Not a random murmur, but a purposeful response. The unconscious does not argue with the ego through reasoning. It does not persuade, nor does it lecture. It presents. And what it presents often stands in opposition to the dominant conscious attitude. A person who is overly confident may dream of failure. A person who is always self-sacrificing may dream of selfishness. A person chasing success may dream of being lost. Not to punish, but to restore a balance that has been lost. Jung called this the compensatory function of dreams. When consciousness swells too far in one direction, the unconscious responds with images that draw the person back toward the center. And if this function is ignored, the deviation does not disappear. It only intensifies until it manifests as crisis disturbance or a profound sense of meaninglessness. He stated this very clearly. Dreams compensate the one-sidedness of consciousness. Carl Jung and his symbols. The word compensate here does not imply pure correction. It carries a biological, psychological meaning, just as the body self-regulates when imbalance occurs. The psyche self-regulates through dreams. This explains why people who live very correctly by social standards may still feel empty. Their consciousness may be flawless, but their psyche is off-center, and dreams attempt to draw them back. But dreams do not only look toward the past or the present. Jung emphasized that dreams also carry a more subtle function orientation. They do not merely say, "This is where you are wrong," but quietly whisper, "This is who you could become." In many cases, dreams move far ahead of consciousness, hinting at ways of living that the ego does not yet have the courage to imagine. Jung wrote, "Dreams prepare, announce, or compensate a change in consciousness." Carl Jung, Collected Works, Volume 8. Prepare, announce, compensate. These three vuras fully describe the orienting role of dreams. They function like an inner navigation system operating in the dark without needing the ego's permission. When a person strays too far from a path aligned with their deeper nature, dreams begin to appear more frequently, with stronger imagery and more intense emotion, not to disturb, but to awaken. Many people are surprised to find that their dreams seem pessimistic or threatening. Jung considered this a common misunderstanding. Dreams warn not because they are pessimistic, but because consciousness is blind to danger. A dream of falling from a great height does not say you will fail. It says you are living too far above the ground. A dream of being chased does not say the world is dangerous. It says that a part of you has been abandoned. Jung wrote, "The dream gives a true picture of the subjective state." Carl Jung, Collected Works, Volume 16. A true picture not of external circumstances, but of the inner condition. And precisely Because this picture is so uncompromisingly truthful, dreams often irritate the ego. The ego wants to continue along the familiar path. The dream points out that this path is leading toward depletion. The ego wants success according to a fixed image. The dream suggests another direction, less glamorous, perhaps, but more meaningful. At the deepest level, the orienting function of dreams is inseparable from the process Jung called individuation, the process by which a person becomes who they truly are, not according to social standards, but according to the inner order of the self. Dreams do not force change. They simply continue to offer signs, symbols, and recurring stories until consciousness becomes humble enough to listen. Jung wrote, "The unconscious has a natural tendency to bring about a balancing of opposites." Carl Jung Collected Works, Volume 7. This balancing of opposites lies at the heart of the compensatory and orienting function. When we live too much in the light, dreams bring darkness. When we are trapped in darkness, dreams bring images of hope, not to comfort, but to restore order. From here, the connection to the previous part becomes clear because dreams are not created by the ego. They do not serve the ego's goals. They serve a deeper order, the order of the psyche as a living whole. And for this reason, dreams are willing to go against the current when necessary. They correct distorted life attitudes, warn of dangers consciousness has not yet recognized, and quietly reveal a path of personal development that only the individual can walk. From a Jungian perspective, dreams are not something to believe in or doubt. They are a vital function of the mind, operating continuously to prevent the human being from losing themselves. And when we begin to see dreams as a compensatory and orienting system rather than a random phenomenon, we do not only understand our nights more deeply, we begin to understand why our waking lives turn in certain directions, and what deeper invitation the psyche has been patiently extending all along. Once we understand that dreams are compensatory and orienting, we are compelled to take one further step, a foundational step. For if dreams can correct life, attitudes, warn of danger, and open paths of development, this can only occur if the source from which dreams arise is an organized and intelligent reality. Jung gave this reality a name that modern people instinctively doubt the moment they hear it, the unconscious. But for Jung, the unconscious is not nothingness, not a mental rubbish dump, but a real psychological reality, living dynamic and continuously active. Jung was exceptionally careful when speaking about the unconscious. He did not treat it as a vague philosophical idea, nor did he use it as a metaphor. Throughout his work, he emphasized that the unconscious is the sum total of psychological processes that truly exist but have not yet become conscious. These processes think, react, remember, and form images whether we recognize them or not. Therefore, denying the unconscious does not make it disappear. It only renders a person blind to a vast portion of themselves. Jung wrote a crucial statement. The unconscious is not merely something that lies there like a psychic rubbish heap, but is a living system. Carl Jung Collected Works, Volume 8. A living system. Jung's choice of words here is decisive. It shows that the unconscious is not passive, not inert, not waiting to be excavated. It actively operates, interacts with consciousness, and continually seeks expression. Dreams are only one of its most visible pathways. There are also fantasies, unconscious actions, lapses, disproportionate emotional reactions, and above all, symbols, the primordial language of the psyche. Modern people often tend to treat these phenomena as system errors, slips of the tongue, forgetting keys, overreacting emotionally, becoming fixated on a seemingly meaningless image. But Jung did not see these as errors. He saw them as signs of inner life seeking a way to the surface. When consciousness does not open the door, the unconscious looks for cracks. Jung wrote, "The unconscious is continually active, combining its material in such a way as to produce symbols." Carl Jung Mann and his symbols. Symbols are not decorative products. They are the unconscious compressing vast amounts of meaning into a single image, bypassing the limits of logical language. When a symbol appears repeatedly in dreams or imagination, it is a sign that an important psychological process is underway, even if the ego is not yet capable of naming it. This leads to a profound reversal in how we understand reality. Modern people tend to acknowledge only what can be measured, observed, and externally verified. But Jung asserted that psychological reality is as real as physical reality. An unconscious fear can govern behavior more powerfully than any objective event. An inner image can shape an entire life, even if no one else ever sees it. He wrote, "Psychic reality exists in its own right. It is a reality that cannot be denied." Carl Jung Collected Works, Volume 6. This statement places the unconscious in a position that cannot be trivialized. If psychological reality exists independently, then failing to recognize it does not make us freer. It merely causes us to be directed from behind the scenes. This is where Jung fundamentally diverged from reductionist thinking. He did not ask, "Is this real?" but rather, "How is this operating within the psyche?" The unconscious, in Jungian terms, is not an inferior layer to be transcended. It is the foundation of all conscious life. The ego cannot exist without the unconscious supporting it. And when the ego denies this foundation, it becomes fragile, defensive, and increasingly rigid. Jung wrote, "The unconscious is the source of all renewal of life." Carl Jung, Collected Works. Volume 7. The source of renewal, not only in art or religion, but in personal life itself. New ideas, new directions, and healing turning points do not arise from conscious repetition. They emerge from unconscious movements that have been fermenting in the dark. When people sever their relationship with the unconscious, life becomes dry, repetitive, and devoid of meaning, even if everything appears fine on the surface. For this reason, Jung regarded manifestations of the unconscious, dreams, fantasies, lapses, not as things to be corrected, but as messages to be listened to. Not to be mechanically analyzed, but to re-establish a relationship between consciousness and the deeper layers of the psyche. Here, the continuity with the previous section becomes clear. Dreams can compensate and orient precisely because they arise from a real psychological reality, not from randomness. If the unconscious were mere nothingness, dreams could not carry information. If the unconscious were inactive, it could not warn. It is because the unconscious is alive that it responds. Jung never called on people to sink into the unconscious. He did not advocate surrendering unconditionally to instinct. What he emphasized was relationship, a mature relationship between the ego and the unconscious, in which the ego listens without capitulating, and the unconscious expresses itself without taking over. When such a relationship is established, the psyche begins to function as a whole. Jung wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." Carl Jung, Collected Works, Volume 13. Making the darkness conscious. This is not a slogan, but a precise description of inner work. And that work can only begin when we acknowledge that the unconscious is a real part of life, not an error to be eliminated. From this point onward, the journey into deeper layers of the psyche loses its aura of danger or mysticism. It becomes a natural process. Consciousness, learning to cooperate with a psychological reality larger than itself. And only then does a person cease to live as though they were merely the surface of themselves, and begin to live with the depth, order, and meaning that Jung called the path of individuation. Once we acknowledge that the unconscious is a real psychological reality, continuously active and expressing itself through dreams, imagination, and symbols. An unavoidable consequence emerges if human beings sever their relationship with this reality. Psychological energy does not disappear. It becomes compressed. Jung did not treat this as an abstract hypothesis, but as a fundamental law governing the psyche. And from this point, he was able to explain why modern people, despite living more comfortably than ever before, carry within themselves restlessness, vague anxiety, irrational irritability, and a profound sense of inner emptiness. Carl Gustav Jung called psychological energy libido, but not in the narrow sense of sexual drive. For Jung, libido is the universal life energy of the psyche, the force behind thought, emotion, creativity, longing, and even spiritual life. When this energy flows naturally between consciousness and the unconscious, a person feels alive. But when that flow is blocked, especially when the unconscious is ignored, the energy loses its healthy channels of expression. Jung wrote, "Libido is the energy of the psyche." Carl Jung Collected Works, Volume 5. This brief statement is the key to understanding much of modern psychological crisis. Psychological energy cannot be destroyed by reason or by busyness. When people lose connection with dreams, the most direct pathway into the unconscious, libido becomes compressed, accumulates, and eventually transforms. It no longer appears as vitality, but as anxiety, without clear cause, misplaced irritability, or a fatigue that rest alone cannot explain. Jung observed that many of his patients lacked neither willpower nor discipline nor external success. What they lacked was an outlet for repressed inner energy. And it was precisely here that he established a direct connection between disconnection from the unconscious and the formation of neurosis. He wrote, "Neurosis is always a substitute for legitimate suffering." Carl Jung Collected Works, Volume 8. The legitimate suffering Jung referred to is not random pain. It is the natural tension that arises when consciousness is required to confront unconscious contents seeking recognition. When people refuse this tension by ignoring dreams, denying symbols, or overloading life with activity, the psyche does not stop. It simply changes strategy. Instead of dialogue, it produces symptoms. Vague restlessness is often one of the earliest signs. It is not a specific fear, but a feeling that something is wrong, even when everything externally appears fine. Jung believed this signals libido becoming trapped, unable to find an object of expression. When energy is not used for development, it turns into inner tension, keeping a person in a constant state of alertness and easy agitation. Next comes irritability and aggression. Jung did not view this merely as a personality flaw. He clearly saw that when unconscious energy is unrecognized, it often erupts through lower channels of the psyche. A person may react violently to trivial matters, not because they are inherently hostile, but because they carry a quantity of energy that has been suppressed for too long. Jung wrote, "The more the unconscious is repressed, the more dangerous it becomes." Carl Jung, Collected Works, Vol. 7. The danger here is not overt violence, but quiet destruction. The destruction of relationships, of concentration, of a stable sense of self. And eventually, when libido cannot find release through action or emotion, it shifts into what Jung considered the most serious state of all emptiness and loss of meaning. Many people label this condition burnout existential crisis or mental exhaustion. Jung named it more precisely the withdrawal of life energy from consciousness. When the unconscious is not listened to, it ceases to invest energy in daytime life. People continue to live and work, but no longer feel alive. Jung wrote, "Loss of soul is the neurosis of our time." Carl Jung, Collected Works, Volume 10. Loss of soul is not a religious term here. It describes a condition in which a person is no longer connected to their deepest source of energy, and dreams the natural channel through which that energy flows, when ignored, leave behind a void that nothing external can fill. Importantly, Jung did not place blame on the individual. He saw this as a collective phenomenon. Modern culture encourages control optimization and avoidance of inner life. In such a context, disconnection from dreams becomes nearly normative. But the psyche does not change according to culture. Its energetic laws remain intact. And thus, neurosis becomes the normal pathology of the age. Jung wrote, "We are so captivated by and entangled in our subjective consciousness that we have forgotten the age-old fact that God speaks chiefly through dreams and visions." Carl Jung, Psychology and Religion. Though framed in religious language, Jung was pointing to a psychological reality. When communication with the unconscious is cut off, human beings lose their capacity to regulate inner energy. Dreams are not a therapy, but they are the psyche's natural release valve. Without them, pressure accumulates. And for this reason, the continuity with the previous section becomes fully coherent, because the unconscious is a real reality. Failing to engage with it is not a neutral choice. It produces concrete, energetic consequences. Not immediately, not noisily, but quietly over time, eroding meaning. Jung did not advise people to forcibly excavate the unconscious. He simply emphasized that the psyche needs to be listened to. When dreams receive attention, even just a few moments of silence upon waking, the flow of energy begins to recover its natural rhythm. And when energy flows, neurosis is no longer needed as a substitute message. At this point, we can understand something more deeply. Connecting with dreams is not about becoming mystical or special, but about restoring a healthy pathway for the psyche to function. When that pathway opens, restlessness softens, irritability calms, and emptiness gives way to a meaning that does not need to be proven. This is not a miracle. It is psychological energy being returned to its rightful place. Once it becomes clear that failing to connect with dreams causes psychological energy to be compressed, we arrive at a deeper question. Where does that energy go? Jung did not answer this with vague concepts. He pointed very specifically to the points of concentration of libido within the psyche, and he called them complexes. It is here that psychological energy gathers, operates, and if denied, erupts in the ways that cause human beings the greatest suffering. For Carl Gustav Jung, a complex is not a pathology, nor a disorder that must be eliminated. On the contrary, a complex is a living unit of psychic energy. It forms around experiences of high emotional intensity, love, abandonment, shame, failure, power, fear. Each complex carries within it an unfinished story, and precisely because it is unfinished, it retains energy. Jung wrote, "Complexes are the living units of the unconscious psyche." Carl Jung Collected Works, Volume 8, Living Units. This phrase completely overturns the common prejudice that complexes are something bad to be avoided. Jung believed that the psyche does not operate through abstract concepts, but through concrete centers of energy. And complexes are precisely where libido takes root. They think, react, and even act like small personalities within the human being. This is why we can suddenly react out of proportion in situations that seem ordinary, not because we are weak, but because a complex has been activated. When this happens, the ego is no longer at the helm. Jung called this phenomenon the possession by a complex. He wrote, "Complexes are autonomous and behave like independent beings." Carl Jung Collected Works, Volume 7, Autonomous Self-Governing. This explains why a complex can make a person say things they never intended to say, act against their conscious values, and then later regret it without understanding why. Not because of moral failure, but because the energy of the complex is stronger than the energy of the ego at that moment. Here, the connection to the previous section becomes clear. When psychological energy is compressed, due to disconnection from the unconscious, it does not disappear. It crystallizes around complexes. And if these complexes continue to be denied, labeled as bad, weak, or unacceptable, they will seek expression through destructive channels. Jung observed that most forms of neurosis do not originate from the existence of complexes, but from the ego's attitude toward them. When the ego attempts to eliminate, suppress, or deny a complex, the energy within it becomes antagonistic. But when the ego has the courage to make the complex conscious something remarkable occurs, that same energy begins to serve life. Jung wrote, "It is not complexes that cause suffering, but our attitude toward them." Carl Jung, Collected Works. Volume 8. This is one of Jung's most profoundly humane statements. He did not see complexes as enemies. He saw them as misunderstood sources of vitality. A denied complex often appears in negative form: jealousy, control, dependency, inferiority, aggression. But when that complex is seen and brought into consciousness, its energy reverses direction. For example, an abandonment complex, when denied, produces anxiety, clinging, or anger. But when made conscious, that same energy can become the capacity for deep attachment, compassion, and loyalty. No new energy is added. Only the way the energy is used is transformed. Jung wrote, "Complexes are in fact the focal points of psychic life." Carl Jung, Collected Works. Volume 8. Focal points. Points of convergence. This is why no rich inner life exists without passing through complexes. A person without complexes would not be free, but cut off from their own life energy. Jung even suggested that creativity, passion, and personal depth all originate from integrated complexes. But integration does not mean indulgence. Jung did not encourage people to live out their complexes. He emphasized a conscious relationship between the ego and the complex. When the ego is strong enough to recognize, "This is my complex, but it is not the whole of who I am," the complex loses its power of possession. Its energy ceases to be destructive and becomes a driving force for life. Jung wrote, "A complex can be so autonomous that it robs the ego of its energy." Carl Jung, Collected Works, Volume 8. This statement is not meant to instill fear, but to underline one essential point. Energy always flows toward what is conscious. When a complex is pushed into the shadows, it quietly drains energy from the ego. When it is brought into the light, that energy returns to serve the psyche as a whole. At the deepest level, working with complexes is an indispensable part of the process. Jung called individuation. Jung believed that human beings do not become whole by eliminating their unpleasant parts. but by integrating them into a larger inner order. Each complex that becomes conscious is a portion of energy returned to its rightful place. And thus, the progression from Part 6 to Part 7 is not merely theoretical, but a very concrete chain of operations. Disconnection from the unconscious. Energy becomes compressed. Compressed energy crystallizes into complexes. Denied complexes become destructive. Conscious complexes become vitality. Jung did not promise ease. He did not claim that working with complexes would be comfortable. But he was unwavering in one: conviction. No psychological energy is inherently bad. There is only energy that has not yet been placed into the right relationship. And when people begin to see complexes not as problems, but as centers of energy awaiting transformation, they do more than heal symptoms. They begin to reclaim life energy that was lost long ago, not by becoming someone else, but by becoming themselves more fully. Once we understand that complexes are autonomous centers of living energy within the psyche, emotionally charged, and capable of taking possession of consciousness when denied another explanatory doorway, naturally opens. Where do these complexes appear? Most clearly, Jung answered, without hesitation, they take form in dreams. And it is precisely here that a key principle of analytical psychology is established. Each dream image usually represents the dreamer themselves. Carl Gustav Jung emphasized that dreams are not created to depict the external world directly. They are not news reports, nor are they social scripts. Dreams are an inner stage where the psyche tells its own story through vivid images. For this reason, when someone dreams of parents, lovers, enemies, or even complete strangers, Jung urged caution against a familiar reflex. This dream is about that person. Most of the time, this is a misunderstanding. Jung stated very clearly, in dreams, the figures usually represent parts of the dreamer's own personality. Carl Jung collected works. Volume 8. This statement completely overturns the habitual way dreams are interpreted. Rather than viewing dreams as mirrors reflecting the external world, Jung saw them as mirrors turned inward. The figures in dreams are not others in a social sense, but personified psychological parts. Each figure carries an attitude, an emotion, a complex seeking recognition. This also explains why dreams often feel confusing or disturbing. A person who dreams of being betrayed may wake up with anger directed at the figure who appeared in the dream. But Jung would ask a different question. Which part of you is betraying yourself? Not to assign blame, but to redirect the question from outside to inside. Dreams are not concerned with who is right or wrong in society. They are concerned with the dynamics operating within the psyche. Jung wrote, "The dream is the small hidden door in the deepest and most intimate sanctum of the soul." Carl Jung man and his symbols. Sanctum, the most sacred inner place. This means that dreams do not use images of other people to speak about them, but use them as living symbols for what is unfolding within the dreamer. A powerful figure may represent an unlived authority. A fragile child may embody a neglected vulnerability. An aggressive character may be repressed, energy-seeking release. This principle connects directly with the previous section. Complexes require images in order to express themselves, and dreams provide precisely that stage. Complexes do not speak in concepts. They speak in emotion, action, and character. When a complex is activated in a dream, it takes on a form not to deceive, but to be seen. Jung emphasized that the greatest mistake in working with dreams is projection, assigning the full meaning of a dream image to another person in waking life. This strips the dream of its healing function. For when we continue to look outward, we miss the opportunity to look inward. He wrote, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." Carl Jung Collected Works, Volume 7. In dreams, this principle operates even more powerfully. Figures that frighten us, repel us, enchant us, or provoke intense hatred often carry a fragment of the psyche that has been split off, not because we resemble them behaviorally, but because they hold an energy we have not yet dared to claim as our own. In this way, dreams become the mind's most refined mechanism of self-recognition. This also explains why Jung consistently warned against moralizing dream interpretation. When we dream of bad behavior, it does not mean that we are bad. It means the psyche is revealing a repressed energy, and if it continues to be denied, that energy will seek expression in waking life through less healthy channels. Jung wrote, "The dream does not disguise, it reveals." Carl Jung Collected Works, Volume 16. Dreams do not conceal, they expose. But they expose through the language of symbols, not the logic of a courtroom. Therefore, when a dream figure speaks or acts in a certain way, Jung suggested a simple but revolutionary inner movement. Replace that person's name with the word I, not to draw conclusions, but to open a new way of listening. For example, instead of saying, "He is so weak" in the dream, try asking, "Which part of me is weak?" Not to condemn, but to return the image to its rightful subject. When this happens, the dream ceases to be a story about others and becomes a dialogue with oneself. At a deeper level, this principle serves the process of individuation. Jung believed that a person cannot become whole while continuing to divide the psyche into me and not me. Dreams help dissolve this split by returning images to their source. When we recognize that dream figures are parts of ourselves, inner responsibility is restored not in a moral sense, but in an energetic one. Jung wrote, "The acceptance of oneself is the essence of the moral problem and the acid test of one's whole outlook on life." Carl Jung Collected Works, Volume 10, Acceptance. Here does not mean indulgence. It means honest recognition. And dreams are where the psyche tests that honesty every night. They present images without forcing, without explaining. They simply ask through symbols, "Are you willing to see me?" For this reason, the transition from Part 7 to Part 8 becomes coherent. Complexes are centers of energy, and dreams are where those complexes take form. When we understand that dream figures are parts of ourselves, we stop trying to fix others inside dreams and begin working with the psyche itself. Dreams in the Jungian light do not tell stories about the world. They tell stories about the relationship between us and ourselves. And when we have the courage to listen to that story without rushing to project blame, outward dreams cease to be mysterious. They become a living map, guiding us back to the parts that were forgotten, but never lost. Once we understand that dream images usually represent the dreamer, themselves a deeper layer immediately emerges, and it is also the layer most frightening to consciousness. If the pursuers in dreams are not someone out there, then who are they? Within us, Jung answered this question with a concept that is famous, yet often misunderstood: the shadow. And he emphasized an uncompromising law of the psyche. What is denied will always return, not to take revenge, but to be seen. Carl Gustav Jung described the shadow as the collection of aspects of the person that the ego refuses to acknowledge as its own. This does not include only bad desires, but also weakness, fear, envy, anger, the need to be loved, and even creative potential that has never been allowed to live. The shadow forms, not because human beings are sinful, but because every society teaches us to select ourselves. What is acceptable is kept. What does not fit is pushed into the dark. Jung wrote with striking clarity, "The shadow personifies everything that the subject refuses to acknowledge about himself." Carl Jung Collected Works, Volume 9. What is rejected does not disappear. It merely loses its right to speak in consciousness. And precisely because it has been expelled from the light, the shadow seeks expression in dreams, where the ego no longer holds absolute control. This is why one of the most common images in nightmares is being chased. An unknown figure, a terrifying creature, a faceless presence. The more one runs, the closer it draws. Jung did not regard such dreams as random. He understood them as symbolic scripts of the relationship between the ego and the shadow. The ego runs. The shadow pursues. Not because the shadow wants to destroy the ego, but because it carries a portion of abandoned life energy. The more it is denied, the more energy it accumulates, and the more violently it appears. Jung wrote, "Everyone carries a shadow, and the less it is embodied in the individual's conscious life, the blacker and denser it is." Carl Jung. Psychology and Religion. Blacker and denser. These words explain why people who strive hardest to be good, right, and fine often experience the most intense nightmares, not because they are bad, but because too much life energy has been cast into the dark. A shadow that is not lived becomes a nightmare. A shadow that is listened to becomes a raw but essential source of strength. Here, the continuity with the previous section becomes clear. If the figures in dreams are parts of the psyche, then the pursuer is no exception. The shadow in dreams is not an enemy, but a part of ourselves demanding the right to exist. And the more the ego runs from it, the more exhausted it becomes. Jung issued a particular warning against moral illusion when confronting the shadow. Many people believe the shadow contains only negative qualities, but Jung stressed that the shadow also holds positive potentials that were never permitted to live. Assertiveness, labeled as selfishness, sensitivity, dismissed as weakness or personal desire, condemned as egoism. He wrote, "The shadow is not necessarily always an opponent. It is sometimes a friend." Carl Jung collected. Works Volume 11. A friend, but an abandoned one. And like all abandoned relationships, it grows bitter. The shadow becomes destructive only when it is denied dialogue. Jung did not advise people to destroy the shadow, nor did he encourage them to live according to the shadow. He proposed a third path, more difficult, but the only one that works, returning to dialogue. In dreams, moments of transformation often appear when the dreamer stops and turns toward the pursuer. Sometimes, that alone is enough for the image to change. The pursuer may disappear, begin to speak, or reveal itself as a familiar figure. For Jung, this is not magic. It is a shift in the ego's attitude from avoidance to dialogue. Jung wrote one of his most well-known lines: "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Carl Jung Collected Works. Volume 13. Making the darkness conscious does not mean indulging destructive instincts. It means taking inner responsibility for what we do not want to see. When the shadow is recognized, the energy compressed within it begins to change direction. The same energy that once produced nightmares becomes courage, vitality, and the capacity to live more truthfully. Jung observed that many prolonged forms of neurosis are in essence the shadow trapped in a state of pursuit. People run through busyness rationalization or self-improvement. But the shadow is indifferent to these strategies. It cares about one thing only being acknowledged as part of the whole. He wrote, "The shadow is a moral problem that challenges the whole ego personality." Carl Jung, Collected Works. Volume 9. Moral problem. Here does not refer to social morality, but to the challenge of inner maturity. Accepting the shadow does not make a person worse. On the contrary, it makes them less dangerous. For a shadow that has been made conscious no longer needs to sabotage from the dark. From Part 8 to Part 9, the operational logic of the psyche becomes unmistakably clear. Dream images are parts of the dreamer. The shadow is the most strongly rejected part. When denied, the shadow appears as a pursuer. When met in dialogue, the shadow transforms, being chased in dreams. In the Jungian, light is not a curse. It is an invitation to stop, to turn around, and to ask, which part of me has been abandoned for too long? Not to judge, but to restore relationship with oneself. And only when a person finds the courage to enter that dialogue does the shadow cease to be a hunter in the night. It becomes what Jung believed to be indispensable for wholeness, a raw, honest, and vital source of energy, finally returned to its rightful place. Once the shadow has been faced, the rejected part that always returns to pursue a subtler truth gradually comes into view. Not every inner conflict takes the form of a frightening darkness. Some conflicts appear more gently, more seductively, even wearing the face of love. And it is here that Jung leads us to a pair of concepts that are easily misunderstood, yet profoundly influential in human relationships: Anima and Animus. If the shadow often appears in dreams as a pursuer, Anima, and Animus appear as the ones we long for, the ideal lover, the guide, the figure that makes the heart tremble, or just as often, the one who wounds us most deeply. Jung did not regard these images as accidental. He believed that images of the opposite sex in dreams usually represent the contrasexual part within the psyche. a part with which the ego does not identify, yet which carries an immense charge of emotional energy. Jung wrote, "The anima is the feminine element in the male psyche, and the animus is the masculine element in the female psyche." Carl Jung, Collected Works, Volume 9. What is crucial is this anima and animus are not copies of real-life members of the opposite sex, but inner psychological structures. They are formed through personal experience, collective imagery, childhood memory, and the collective unconscious itself. And when they have not been made conscious, human beings tend to project their anima or animus onto others. And from that point on, relationships begin to unravel. Jung observed that many emotional tragedies do not arise from choosing the wrong person, but from loving the wrong inner image. When the anima has not been recognized, a man easily idealizes a woman, attributing to her extraordinary qualities. Salvation, total understanding, emotional completion. Love then ceases to be a relationship between two real human beings and becomes a dependency on an unconscious image. Jung wrote, "Projection changes the world into the replica of one's own unknown face." Carl Jung, Collected Works, Volume 10. This sentence precisely describes how anima and animus disrupt relationships. Instead of encountering the other as they truly are, we encounter our own unconscious within them. And when the other person cannot or will not live according to the image we have projected, disappointment arises. Idealized love quickly turns into anger, control, or a sense of betrayal. Here, the continuity with the previous section is unmistakable. The shadow pursues us in the dark. Anima and animus bind us in the light. If the shadow frightens anima and animus enchant, but both arise from the same source, parts of the psyche that have not yet been made conscious seeking expression. Jung emphasized that anima and animus do not only disturb romantic relationships, they also undermine emotional self-sufficiency. When the anima is entirely projected outward, a man loses contact with his own emotional life and becomes dependent on a woman in order to feel alive. Similarly, when the animus is projected outward, a woman may become captivated by images of power, intellectual ideals, or an absolute guide, losing touch with her own inner voice. Jung wrote, "As long as the anima or animus is projected, it produces disturbances in relationships." Carl Jung, Collected Works, Volume 7. Disturbances. Subtle at first, but persistent and corrosive. Emotional dependency, jealousy, fear of abandonment, or an obsession with being validated may all be signs of an anima or animus that has not yet been integrated And when these disturbances go unrecognized, the breakdown of real relationships becomes an almost inevitable outcome. The subtlety of Jung's thinking lies in this: he did not view Anima or Animus as enemies. On the contrary, he saw them as natural bridges between the ego and the unconscious. When made conscious, the Anima brings emotional depth and the capacity for soulful connection. The Animus brings clarity, direction, and inner authority. The problem is not their existence, but the ego's ignorance of their influence. Jung wrote, "The encounter with the Anima is always a test of courage for the man, and the encounter with the Animus is always a test of character for the woman." Carl Jung, Collected Works, Volume 9. A test, not a moral test, but a test of inner maturity. When a person dares to withdraw Anima or Animus back into themselves, a crucial transformation occurs. Outer relationships become more real, less magical, but also more stable. The other person no longer bears the burden of completing us, and we begin to take responsibility for our own emotional lives. From Part 9 to Part 10, a clear psychic process emerges. The shadow is the rejected part that returns as pursuit. Animus is the contrasexual part that returns as enchantment. Both demand the same thing to be made conscious and integrated. A dream, featuring a figure of the opposite sex, is not saying you need that person. It is asking a far deeper question. Which part of you is seeking completion from the outside? When that question is truly heard, Anima and Animus cease to be disturbers. They become quiet guides, leading a person from dependency to mature relationship, from idealization to genuine encounter. And it is precisely here that Jung lays a foundational stone for the process of individuation. No one else can live our contrasexual part for us. When projections are withdrawn, love is no longer a place where we lose ourselves, but a space where two whole human beings can meet without rescue, without completion, simply through presence. This is not a less intense form of love. It is love that is no longer governed by the unconscious. Once one has passed through the shadow, the rejected part that always returns to pursue, and Animus, the contrasexual element that disrupts relationships when projected outward, a deeper axis of psychological life gradually reveals itself. For if the psyche consisted only of conflicting fragments, opposing forces, and disturbing images, the entire inner journey would be nothing more than an endless cycle of crisis management. Jung did not stop there. He introduced another center, quieter, yet decisive, the self, the sacred center of the psyche. Carl Gustav Jung was exceptionally careful when speaking about the self. He repeatedly emphasized that the self is not a stronger ego, nor a better version of the ego. The ego is the center of consciousness. The self is the center of the entire psychological life, encompassing both the conscious and the unconscious. If the ego is the daytime manager, the self is the silent architect of the entire house of the psyche. Jung wrote, "The self is not only the center, but also the whole circumference, which embraces both conscious and unconscious." Carl Jung Collected Works, Volume 12. This statement overturns the way modern people commonly understand the self. The self does not compete with the ego. It contains the ego. And precisely because of this, the self does not appear as a clear voice in consciousness. It communicates through symbols, through dreams, through images, whose evocative power far exceeds rational language. Jung called dreams letters from the self, not because they are mystical, but because they are orienting. After the disturbances caused by the shadow and Anima/Animus, the psyche does not leave the individual trapped indefinitely in conflict. Jung observed that when a person begins to withdraw, projections enter into dialogue with the shadow and integrate the contrasexual element. Dreams gradually change in tone. They no longer merely warn or compensate. They begin to guide. This is when the self starts to appear more clearly in dreams. Jung wrote, "Dreams are the letters of the unconscious mind, and they often represent the self." Carl Jung Collected Works, Volume 9. The self rarely appears directly as I am the self. It takes form through mandalas, circles, centers light, sacred figures, guides divine children, or images that convey a profound sense of order. Not because they are religious, but because they express wholeness, something the ego can never produce on its own. Here, the continuity with the previous section becomes coherent. Anima/Animus serves as a bridge between the ego and the personal unconscious. The self is the coordinating center that transcends them both. While the ego is still occupied with defending against the shadow, or depending on Animus, the self continues to operate in the background, sending its letters faithfully each night. They do not coerce. They do not command. They indicate direction. Jung called the process of following these indications individuation, not becoming special, but becoming whole. Individuation does not eliminate the ego. It places the ego in its rightful position, no longer the master, but a collaborator with a deeper center. Jung wrote, "Individuation means becoming an individual. And insofar as individuality embraces our innermost, last, and incomparable uniqueness, it also implies becoming one's own self. Carl Jung, Collected Works, Vol. 7. Becoming one's own self is not an affirmation of the ego. It is a reordering of the inner structure in which every part, shadow, anima, animus, complexes ego has its place, but no single part dominates the entire psyche. And the self is the organizing principle of that order. What is essential to understand is this: the self never speaks the language of social ambition. It does not promise success, does not guarantee safety, and does not flatter the image the ego wishes to maintain. The letters of the self. Dreams often lead a person away from familiar paths. At times, they cause us to question our choices or feel no longer suited to old roles. Not because we are wrong, but because we have outgrown them. Jung wrote, "The self often appears as a symbol of wholeness, which the conscious ego does not yet possess." Carl Jung, Collected Works, Vol. 11. This is why following dreams can be unsettling, not because the self is dangerous, but because the ego must relinquish the illusion of absolute control. Yet Jung believed that only when the ego accepts this humble position can a person escape the repetitive loop of neurosis. For neurosis, in the final analysis, is the conflict between the ego and the self, between who we are living as and who we are being invited to become. At the deepest level, the self carries a dimension Jung did not hesitate to call sacred, not in a doctrinal religious sense, but in an experiential one, when a person feels that their life has order, meaning, and inner guidance. This experience is not loud. It often arrives as a quiet sense of being in the right place, even when it cannot be fully explained. Jung wrote, "The experience of the self is always a defeat for the ego." Carl Jung, Collected Works, Vol. 14. Defeat. Here is not a tragic failure. It is the necessary surrender that allows a larger order to function. When the ego stops trying to be the center of everything, the self begins to coordinate life according to a deeper rhythm, not faster, but more timely. And thus, the progression from Part 10 to Part 11 is not merely conceptual, but the living process of the psyche itself. The shadow demands recognition. Anima, Animus, demands the withdrawal of projection. The ego learns to listen. The self begins to guide. Dreams in this context are no longer isolated psychological phenomena. They become the continuous language of the self, sending subtle signals to keep the person from straying from their own path. Not the easiest path, not the most praised path, but the path most aligned with the deep structure of the psyche. The self does not promise happiness in the conventional sense. It promises wholeness. And Jung believed that for human beings, wholeness is always more important than comfort. When we begin to read the letters of the self with humility and patience, the inner journey ceases to be a battle. It becomes a gradual reordering of life from within, where each part is returned to its rightful place, and a person begins to live not through the effort of control, but through the quiet guidance of their own deepest center. Once we have touched the self, the sacred center that coordinates the entire psyche, a larger question naturally arises. If the self truly guides, how does it guide across the course of a human life? Jung answered this with an observation that is at once simple and startling. Dreams are not chaotic. They are not scattered fragments of daytime memory, but a structured sequence, dramatic in form, unfolding across the span of lived time. In other words, dreams tell the story of a life from the building of the ego to the moment it learns how to let go. Carl Gustav Jung approached this insight not through philosophical speculation, but through thousands of clinical cases followed over decades. He observed that when an individual's dreams are placed along a timeline, a clear pattern gradually emerges. Images, conflicts, and symbols do not appear at random. They change according to life stages, reflecting different psychological tasks the psyche must complete. Jung wrote, "The dream is a spontaneous self-portrayal in symbolic form of the actual situation in the unconscious." Carl Jung collected works. Volume 8. Actual situation. The real condition. This means that dreams do not speak about what we think we are living, but about what the psyche is actually undergoing at each stage. And because the psyche changes with age, dreams change with it, not capriciously, but according to an inner order. In the first half of life, Jung observed that dreams tend to revolve around themes of adaptation, learning, competition, success, failure, sexuality, images of power, and trials. This is the period in which the psyche focuses on building an ego strong enough to stand in the world. Dreams at this stage often function as training warning of danger, pointing out weaknesses and urging the development of life skills. Jung did not consider this phase superficial. On the contrary, he believed that an ego not sufficiently developed cannot descend into depth. And dreams, in the first half of life, serve as a quiet guide, helping the ego learn how to position itself among the world and others. But at a certain point, often in midlife, dreams begin to change their tone. Familiar symbols of outer achievement gradually give way to inward-turning images, old houses, descents underground, deep water, guides, symbolic death. Jung called this the greatest turning point of psychological life, not because of external events, but because the task of the psyche has changed. Jung wrote, "What was of greatest importance in youth now becomes of little value, and what was once truth now becomes error." Carl Jung, Modern Man in Search of a Soul. This sentence does not negate the past. It describes a shift in the center of gravity of life. In the second half of life, the psyche no longer prioritizes outward expansion. It begins to draw energy back toward the center, toward meaning synthesis and preparation for the finite end of the body. And dreams are where this process becomes most visible. Jung observed that dreams of death in midlife or old age are not threatening when the dreamer does not resist them. They often appear as transitions, the closing of a chapter, or a return home. For Jung, these were not pathological signs, but natural functions of the psyche as it prepares for completion. He wrote, "The goal of the second half of life is not expansion, but contraction, not development, but completion." Carl Jung, Collected Works, Volume 8, Completion. This word makes it clear that the psyche operates as a whole process, not as an endlessly ascending line of growth. And dreams are the most faithful chronicle of that process. When placed side by side, the dreams of an entire life form a dramatic structure, beginning, climax, turning point, and closure. What matters is this: the psyche does not impose this rhythm through force of will. It does not command people to mature or let go. It suggests direction, night after night, through symbols. When a person lives in harmony with their psychological stage, dreams become supportive. When a person clings to the tasks of an earlier stage, dreams become conflicted. Jung wrote, "Nature herself demands a turning inward." Carl Jung, Collected Works, Volume 10. This is the crucial point linking Part 11 to Part 12. The self does not only coordinate the present moment, it coordinates the entire life cycle. The letters of the self, dreams, change their content over time because the goal of the individuation process also changes. Not to make a person better, but to make them right for their stage of life. Jung believed that most existential crises do not arise from objective tragedy, but from the ego's refusal to step into a new chapter. When a middle-aged person continues to live as though they were 20, dreams grow dark, not to punish, but to warn that the inner order is being violated. And it is precisely here that we see what Jung meant when he asserted that the psyche operates according to a secret but purposeful order. Secret because it does not reveal itself in the language of reason. Purposeful because it is never meaningless. Jung wrote, "The unconscious is not chaotic. It is structured and purposeful. Carl Jung, Collected Works, Volume 7. This sentence stands as the natural conclusion to the entire journey through the 12 points. Dreams are not disturbances of a tired mind. They are the living map of the psyche, reflecting each stage, each turn, each deep requirement of inner life. When dreams are viewed within the time frame of an entire lifetime, people stop searching for immediate meaning. They begin to see continuity, to see that what is happening today has roots in the past and is preparing a different inner future. Not a future of achievement, but a future of completion. And thus, the end point of the Jungian journey is not controlling dreams, nor decoding every symbol. It is a cautious trust in a deeper order, already at work within. An order that is unhurried, not loud, yet patiently guiding a person from birth through maturity, and finally toward return. In that light, dreams are not merely nocturnal events. They are the quiet current of a life seeking to complete itself. Outro. And perhaps, after all that we have passed through, the most important thing is not understanding dreams, but changing the way we stand before them. Dreams do not ask you to analyze better. They do not demand that you remember more or decode more accurately. What dreams wait for is simply a different attitude. A slow, humble listening patient enough not to rush to judgment. Carl Gustav Jung never regarded dreams as something to be controlled. He saw them as a living relationship between ego and psyche, between what we know and what we have not yet dared to know, between the person who is living and the person who is becoming. There are dreams that only need to be remembered. There are dreams that only need to be felt. And there are dreams which, even when not understood, are still doing exactly what they are meant to do, keeping you from losing yourself. If there is one thing Jung wished modern humans to relearn, it is not psychological technique, but the trust that within us exists an order deeper than the ego. An order that does not speak in commands, but whispers through symbols, images, and dreams that return night after night. So tonight, you do not need to try to remember anything. You do not need to decode anything. Just sleep and let the psyche do its work. If these reflections resonate with you, you may continue listening in the next episodes of the channel. And if they do not, dreams will still come, as they always have.